Today's video is all about desserts. And these are delicious anytime, but absolutely perfect for this time of year. Hey y'all, I'm Valerie, and welcome to my kitchen. In today's video, I'm showing 6 of the best fall dessert recipes. These are some of our favorites, so I really hope you enjoy them. Okay y'all, let's get started. This pumpkin butterscotch bundt cake was a new family favorite for sure. In a large bowl, you're going to add in a box of yellow cake mix, and I would try to use the 15.25 ounce boxes, any of the Duncan Hines, but in case you didn't know, Betty Crocker changed their box cake mix to 13.25 ounce. And instead of making 24 cupcakes like a cake mix usually makes, they only make 21. Crazy. Okay, back to the recipe here. I added in a small box of the instant butterscotch pudding mix, along with 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, 4 eggs, 1/4 cup of water, and 1/4 cup of vegetable oil. I'm also adding in 1 cup of the pure pumpkin puree. Now mix this until it's well combined, and you'll want to mix it for a good 2 minutes here. And I'm using a Bundt pan, and in case you're curious, mine's a 9.5 inch. And anytime I make a bundt cake, I always grease it with Crisco and spray it with nonstick spray, and I have to use that Baker's Joy. It's the absolute best. Now that batter is super thick, but go ahead and spread it in as evenly as possible. And I like to swirl a knife around in there. I feel like that just helps to spread it out. And it also helps not to get it all over the inside of that pan there towards the top. Now this goes into the oven to bake at 350 for 35 to 45 minutes. And this is my favorite, and at the same time, it's the scariest part of making a bundt cake. Because y'all, sometimes it comes out perfect, and sometimes only half the cake comes out. It did good for me on this day though. Perfect actually. And if you ever have a cake to fall apart on you, just go ahead and crumble that thing up and add in a little icing. Mix that up really good, roll them into balls, and dip them in chocolate. Those cake balls are the best. And this didn't call for a glaze, but I wanted to add a little something on top. And of course, I messed this part up. Since it was pumpkin butterscotch, I thought caramel would go good with that. So I mixed together some melted butter, powdered sugar, and that caramel sauce, and whisk it until it's very, very well combined. Oh, and here's where I might have messed up. I added just a little bit of milk. And you will have to work at this to get it to mix together well. But trust me, it's better to kind of work with it and stir it really good and give it a little time before you go adding too much liquid. Now grab that bundt cake and you're going to drizzle it right over the top. And at first it looked like it was going to be perfect. And then it pretty much just ran all off of the cake. So y'all know me, I ended up mixing up some more, minus the milk. And I think that did much better. But you could totally skip the glaze if you want, and you could just dust it with some powdered sugar. Make it a whole lot easier. I did drizzle on a little of that Hersheys caramel syrup, but I wish I had had some of the Hersheys ice cream topping caramel. That's a lot thicker and that would have done much better. This was so good. I think you'll love it. This hot chocolate poke cake was a new one for us and we absolutely loved it. I'm starting out with a large bowl. You're going to need 1 box of chocolate cake mix. I'm using the triple chocolate fudge, but you can use your favorite. And I'm just mixing this up according to the directions on the back of the box. It called for water, oil, and eggs, but I always use milk in the place of water. Now I thought I had this ready to go, but apparently I did not have the beaters pushed in all the way. So let's try this again. You're just going to mix it just exactly like you mix up a cake. Just mix it until it's well combined. Because right now we're just making a basic cake here. I am making this in a 9x13 baking dish. And you do want to grease it with something or spray it with nonstick spray. Now just pour in that cake batter. You're going to bake this at 350 for 25 to 30 minutes, or until a toothpick inserted comes out clean. And here it is out of the oven, and you do not have to let it cool. We can go ahead to the next step. You can use the end of a wooden spoon, or like me, I'm using my mixer attachments. You just want to cover that cake with holes. Poke holes all in the top of that cake. Now we're going to push that to the side, and we're going to make up something to pour over the top. You'll just need a medium-sized bowl here. I'm adding in a 7-ounce container of marshmallow fluff, and somebody has already gotten into this, so I am using what I have here. And this stuff is very, very sticky. I'm going to thin this out so it's pourable. I'm adding 2 tablespoons of water to that, and then I microwaved it in 20-second intervals until it was completely well combined and melted. And be careful with that cake, mine was still very hot here. You're just going to pour that marshmallow fluff all over the top. And the goal is to get it to run down all into those holes. That way you have marshmallow fluff inside the cake there. I've got a 12.8-ounce jar of Hersheys hot fudge sauce here. I did microwave that for a few seconds. Just follow the directions on the back of the jar. And you're just going to pour it right on top of that marshmallow fluff. Now just spread it out until it completely covers everything. Now this goes into the refrigerator to chill until it's completely cooled. I'd say about 4 to 6 hours. But if you can do it overnight, that'll be fine too. Now right before you're ready to serve it, we're going to make up a topping for it. I'm using 2 envelopes of this hot chocolate mix. You can use the kind with or without the marshmallows. Okay, to that dry hot cocoa powder, I added a couple tablespoons of heavy cream. You don't have to do this, but I just figured that it would mix in better with the Cool Whip this way. I'm using 8 ounces of whipped topping. I'm adding that in, and then I'm going to gently fold it all together. We're just really creating a hot cocoa whipped topping. And I would love to have some ideas from y'all. What kind of recipes you want to see next? What kind of desserts maybe? I do have some appetizers on the way, and Sunday I'm doing 3-ingredient crockpot recipes, so y'all be on the lookout for that. I also have some healthy and low-carb ones coming too. Okay, now I'm just taking that hot cocoa Cool Whip and I'm spreading it all over the top of that cake. Now I'm covering it with about 2 to 3 cups of mini marshmallows, and you can just use as many mini marshmallows as your heart desires here. And I still had just a tiny bit of hot fudge in that jar. I did microwave it for just a couple seconds, and now I'm just using that to add on top. I just wanted to do a little drizzle. This cake was so good. And I'm telling you, it's even better if it can sit in the refrigerator overnight. That cake really soaks up everything, the marshmallow fluff and the hot fudge. You could even sprinkle it with some graham crackers and call it a s'mores cake. Okay, now I'm going to have to try that. This cake was delicious. I'm definitely going to make it again, and I really hope you give this one a try. This pumpkin spice Oreo dump cake It's super easy to make and it is so good. You'll need a 9x13 baking dish. I used just a regular package of the pumpkin spice Oreos. I could have probably used the family size pack though. Now you're going to lay those evenly on the bottom of that dish. Next, you're going to drizzle over 1 can of sweetened condensed milk. And this stuff does not drizzle good. After you get it all on there, you're going to spread it out. And it does get a little tricky here, but after you get started, you'll get the hang of it. You just got to spread it without moving those Oreos all over the place. Now I'm topping it with an 8-ounce tub of whipped topping. I love this stuff. I used to eat it straight out of the tub. We love cookies and cream too, where you take a tub of whipped topping and you take a package of Oreos and crush them up and mix those two together. That is so good. And after you get all that spread out, you're going to sprinkle over 1 box of spice cake mix. And you're just using the dry cake mix here, not the ingredients on the back of the box. And you just want to spread it out. Try to spread it into an even layer. That way you don't have any thick spots of cake mix. Then you're going to take 1.5 sticks of butter, slice them very thin, and place it all over the top of that cake. And that's it. This is ready to go in the oven. I'll let it bake at 350 for 35 to 45 minutes, or just until that top gets kind of golden brown. I like to serve this while it's still warm and top it with vanilla ice cream. If you love pumpkin spice, you're going to love this. And if you don't, you can always change it up. You could use the regular Oreos or even the golden ones. And for the cake mix, you could use a chocolate or even a vanilla. Just make it your own. And make sure you have some ice cream on hand to go with it. Delicious. This pumpkin chess pie was so easy to make. To begin, in a large bowl, add in a 15-ounce can of pure pumpkin. Not the pumpkin pie filling. Make sure it says 100% pure pumpkin. The recipe called for 2 cups of granulated sugar, and y'all know how I like to change things up. I thought it would be good with a little brown sugar in there. Don't you agree? So I ended up doing 1 cup of granulated sugar and 1 cup of packed brown sugar. I also did 3/4 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice, and 1/2 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. Oh, and 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Now add 1 stick of melted butter. Then you're just going to blend this on high speed until it's completely smooth. We only have a couple more things to add in. 3 eggs and 1/2 cup of 1/2 and 1/2. Now I don't keep 1/2 and 1/2 on hand, so I did 1/4 cup of water and 1/4 cup of heavy cream. And that gave me a little 1/2 and 1/2. Now mix that until it's very well combined. Now we're ready to pour it in our pie crust. You will need a deep dish. I'm using this frozen one from Aldi. I was actually very impressed with this one. It was just as good, if not better, than the Pillsbury ones I get from Walmart. You know, sometimes the edges are all messed up, but this one was perfect. Okay, and as I was pouring this in, I was like, oh my, I'm pushing it here. This is not gonna fit. But I did not want to waste that filling. I went ahead and put it in a preheated 350-degree oven, and it'll need to bake for about an hour. After I got that in the oven, I had to find something to put the rest of that filling in. I have a few of these cute little ramekins here. I think they came from Ingles, but I just sprayed that with a little nonstick spray, and then I poured in the rest of that filling. And this will not need to bake for quite as long. You're just looking for, when you put a knife in the center, for it to come out clean. I checked them after about 25 minutes and that little one was done. I thought that pie was going to overflow for a minute there, but thankfully it did not. And this was set around the edges, but that middle was still a little bit jiggly. But that was perfect because I stuck a knife in it and that knife came out clean. You do want to let this completely cool before you serve it. We just topped ours with some whipped cream. This turned out so good. I love it even better than a regular pumpkin pie. It has that pumpkin flavor, but more of a chess pie texture. More of a gooey, fudgy texture. It was so good, and I'll definitely be making this one again. Everyone's still raving about these orange butter cake bars. I was craving some gooey butter cake. I had an orange cake mix on hand, and here we are. To a large bowl, you're going to add in a 15.25 ounce box of orange cake mix, along with 1 egg and 1 stick of melted butter. This is going to be the cookie layer for the bottom of these bars. And you're going to mix it until just combined. It will be crumbly, super thick, but that's fine. That's how it's supposed to be. As long as you can press it into that dish, you're good to go. You're going to grab a 9x13 baking dish or a pan. And y'all, I was so excited to make these, I completely forgot to line the bottom of my pan. I always try to line it with aluminum foil or parchment paper. That way I can lift them out when they're done. It's so much easier to cut that way. I pressed it evenly into the bottom of that dish and then I set it aside. Now we're making the gooey cheesecake mixture. In that same bowl, I added 8 ounces of softened cream cheese. And make sure it's softened. If it's not, just pop it in the microwave for a few seconds to soften it up. I also added 1 stick of melted butter, 2 eggs, 2 tablespoons of orange zest. It was a zest from 1 whole big orange, and 4 cups of powdered sugar. And it is a little easier to mix if you add that powdered sugar just a little bit at a time. And you're just going to mix it until there's no more lumps and that cream cheese and powdered sugar are completely and well combined. Because you want this part smooth and creamy. When you get that mixed up nice and really smooth, you're going to grab that baking dish with the bottom layer and you're going to pour that cheesecake mixture right on top. Have y'all ever had the butter cake bars? I love them and I've done them in several other different flavors. I have to say though, this was probably my favorite. And you do want to make sure you spread this out. Now this goes into the oven to bake at 350 for 40 to 45 minutes. You can see that top is a little golden brown. And if you shake it, that middle will still be slightly jiggly, but it'll be set around the edges. And I let these completely cool before I cut them into squares. And if you want, after you let them completely cool, you can pop them in the refrigerator to chill. That helps them actually to cut so much easier. And I'm telling you, these were like a 20 out of 10. Just make sure you don't overbake them. You don't want to burn that cookie layer on the bottom. But the texture of that bottom layer is crunchy and that top cheesecake layer is nice and chewy and gooey. And yes, that orange flavor took these to a whole nother level. These were absolutely amazing. This has to be one of my all-time favorites. I started out in a 9x13 inch baking dish. I added in 1 stick of butter. Then I placed this in a preheated 350 degree oven to melt. Now for the cobbler, in a large bowl, I added 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour, along with half a teaspoon of salt, 2.5 teaspoons of baking powder, I always like to sift mine, and 3 tablespoons of cocoa powder. And you don't have to sift that. I just figured since I already had my sifter out, I might as well sift the cocoa powder too. I added in half a cup of granulated sugar and half a cup of packed brown sugar. Also, 1 cup of milk and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And this is optional, but I like to add in 1 cup of semi-sweet chocolate chips. Oh, and those peanut butter chips would be amazing in this too. Now mix this until everything is well combined. Okay, that butter should be melted by now, so I removed it from the oven, and I'm adding in that chocolate batter. I'm using a cookie scoop, but you could also use a spoon, or you can just dump it all in and spread it out. It'll work out either way. Now I'm moving that over to the side to start on the topping. In a medium-sized bowl, I added in 1½ cups of granulated sugar, ½ cup of packed brown sugar, and ½ cup of cocoa powder. Now mix that until everything is well combined and most of those lumps from the brown sugar are gone. I know that's a lot of sugar, but this dessert is definitely worth it. Now you're going to take that sugar mixture and spread it evenly over the top. I ended up just dumping it on in. And here's the crazy part to this recipe. You'll take 1 3/4 cup of boiling hot water and pour it evenly over the top. Now, as you do this, you're going to think that you have ruined it and this is never going to turn out right. But trust me, it'll all turn out right in the end. Just be very, very careful not to spill this as you place it in the oven at 350 degrees for 40 to 50 minutes or until the top forms a crust. Now this right here is what I was talking about. That cobbler rises to the top and creates a brownie-like topping with a rich fudge sauce on the bottom. I topped mine with vanilla ice cream and a drizzle of chocolate sauce. And here's a closer look at that fudge sauce on the bottom. This cobbler is absolutely delicious. I think your family will love it, and you definitely need this in your life. This one is a caramel apple pie poke cake. To begin, I added a 21-ounce can of caramel apple pie filling. I stuck my knife down into the can there just to give them a rough chop. That way there weren't no huge pieces of apple in the cake. I added that into the bowl. And by the way, if you can't find the caramel apple pie filling, the regular apple pie filling will do just fine. That was 1/4 cup of milk I added in there, along with 2 eggs, and also a teaspoon of cinnamon and a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Now I'm going to add in a box of yellow cake mix, but if you wanted to change it up, you could also do a spice cake mix or even a butter pecan cake mix. That would be really good. Now I'm just using my electric mixer to mix this until everything is well combined. And I'm going to make this cake in a 9 by 13 inch baking dish, and I've sprayed it with nonstick spray. I poured in that batter, then used my spatula to smooth it all out. Now this bakes at 350 for 25 to 35 minutes. And while the cake is in the oven, I'm going to work on the topping. In a small bowl, I'm adding a 12-ounce jar of caramel sauce, and I did reserve just a tiny bit to drizzle on the very top. Now to that caramel, I added a 14-ounce can of sweetened condensed milk. I wanted to make sure I got every last drop there. This stuff is pretty delicious. Now just gently stir it together until it's well combined. I sat that to the side while I grabbed the cake out of the oven. And you don't have to let this cool because you do still want it a little warm. You can use the end of a wooden spoon for this part, but I'm just using the attachment for my hand mixer. I poked holes all in the top of that cake. Now I'm pouring over that caramel sauce that we just made up. And I did spread it out with my spatula and try to work that caramel sauce down into those holes. I did let it sit for a minute to let that sauce sink on in. This is not in the recipe, but before I add the whipped topping, I decided to add on another can of apple pie filling. And I did chop that filling up a pretty good bit. Now over the top of that filling, I added about 1 cup of butterscotch chips. You could also use the caramel bits or the toffee bits for this. Now over the top of all that, I'm adding an 8-ounce container of Cool Whip topping. And gently spread that out to make sure you don't move anything around underneath. Now to finish off this delicious cake, I'm drizzling over that caramel sauce I reserved from earlier. And a few more of those butterscotch chips. And that's it. Now this cake is even better if you can let it chill overnight. But my family couldn't wait to dig into this. This is one of the best poke cakes I have ever had. And it would be perfect to make for Thanksgiving or Christmas or any time of the year. I think your family would really enjoy it. I really hope you enjoyed this video. You may also like these. Don't forget to subscribe down below for more easy recipes, and I will see you in the next one.